So Don is with us. Don's been on this call several times, and we talk about things that are keeping your businesses on the rails in these crazy times called the pandemic. And Don came back and said, "Yeah, they're pretty much scary times all the times." So with that in mind, we're going to turn this over to Don and let you tell us how we can do better.
Thank you, Hal. And thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to talk to everyone today. And I was talking with one of my internal mentors, first when I started with B2B CFO. And, and I started in September of 19, and about 5 months into this is when the pandemic kicked in. I hadn't networked in 30 something years of my career, really. And so we started talking about some of the things that we faced, and then my mentor focused me. It's called the Scary Time Success Manual, and I put that out there as a file to download in the chat. So if anyone wants to see the full version of it, it's out there. And this was originally written by a gentleman named Dan Sullivan, who's the founder and president of the Strategic Coach, which is a consulting business that works with executives and companies on strategic planning. He originally wrote this just after 9/11. He updated it for the financial crisis in 2007 and 2008. And then he periodically updates it after that. And he laid out 10 different strategies to focus on opportunities for growth, progress, and achievement, when the world's kind of turned upside down, which we've been facing over the last year. The first area that I picked out 5 of the 10. So, but the 5 that kind of meant the most to me. And the first was forget about yourself and focus on others. And during uncertain times, we tend to kind of pull back into ourselves. We start feeling isolated and hopeless. And the best strategy to combat that is do the exact opposite. Start to reach out to your network, expand your connections with others, attending Meet Today, lunches like today, and look towards other types of events that you can do. And then reach out to the others and to help them transform their negatives into positives. The more you contribute in this manner, the less you worry about your own situation. Become a source of confidence for others. I'm with a member of another organization called BNI, and it's one of the founding principles of that is givers gain, and it's giving to others without that expectation of getting anything back in return. And I find that, once you can do that, you focus on the others and helping them, that it does come back to you in the long run. The second point was forget about the sale, focus on creating value. Most people don't like being sold to, whether it's good times or bad times. I'm an example of that. For the last 20, 25 years, I've been a CFO of various organizations, and I would hide from salespeople when they called. Email and saying, "Oh, it must have hit my spam filter," or going to voicemail was always a way to put folks off. But what I found out that the best to do was I listened to the folks who came back to me, and they didn't necessarily want to sell me something, but they wanted me to create value within my company. They provided solutions that lowered risk, increased growth, and strengthened my business's positions. When you focus on value creation, sales will follow. Think less about the transaction and more about the creation of value for those companies. Again, as part of my organization with B2B CFO, they did take us through some various training on this. And one of the things that we looked at was integrity selling, which talks about you're bringing value to that customer. That's what, they'll pay you a fee, but your fee needs to be greater. Let me switch that. The value that you bring that company needs to be greater than that fee you charge. And I absolutely, and all of us should be looking towards creating the value for our customers vastly more than what you can bring them. The third is forget about your difficulties and focus on your progress. Things seem to become more difficult during scary times. Everything seems to be a problem when you're going through this. New difficulties can either beat you or reveal new strengths. You get stronger working against resistance. That's what anyone that works out knows, that you increase the weight to build the muscle to get stronger. treat difficult times as an opportunity to make your greatest progress, whether it's personally or professionally. Difficult times give us the ability sometimes to step back and take a look at the overall picture where we can and take a look at, let's look at the things that we do well, enhance those. Let's look at things that we haven't done before and maybe enter into that. And the things that don't bring value either to ourselves or to our clients, that's something we can take a look at dropping. Just keep looking at forward, looking at that progress, and put aside the difficulties that you're facing. The next is forget about events and a focus on your responses. When things are going well, we actually think that we control events, so that when things don't necessarily go our way, it leads to negative feelings and it kind of starts you on a downward spiral. We start to question our abilities. The most consistently successful people realize they can't control events, but they can control their response to these events. Focus your efforts on the response in unpredictable events. And I always look back in my experience that the best piece of business advice that I got from one of my colleagues was worry about the things you control and don't worry about the things you can't control. And it stemmed from a project that I went to work with in my first job out of graduate school. I went to work with some people. I was a consultant in healthcare, and I was pulled into a job to work with some folks that I really had wanted to work with. And so I got on site and I absolutely dropped the ball. And after about 3 days, they thanked me for my time and sent me back, which was not a good thing to have happen to me. And so I came back and started talking to one of my colleagues, and he asked me what happened. And I had a litany of things that had went wrong. And he kind of stopped me. He just goes, you started worrying about the things that were out of your control, and you didn't think about what can you do, think about your response to that. And so from that point forward, every time that I kind of start down that spiral, I look back to that and say, okay, if that's something outside of my control, I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to focus on what I can control and focus on my response to those. And I think that's very important for all of us as we move forward to do that. And then finally, I'm looking to forget about your complaints and focus on your gratitude. Complaining leads to negative thoughts, and then gratitude creates opportunities. The graphic that I have here came from a book called The Abundance Loop, and it's by Juliana Parks. She wrote this book, and it's breaking from a fear-based mindset and trying to look towards the positive piece of this. And as you look towards this, and we need to start with gratitude. When you start expressing gratitude, that will give you a peace of mind. When you have that peace of mind, you start making wise decisions. Those wise decisions turn into positive outcomes. From there, you express the gratitude for those positive outcomes, and it continues to build on itself, and you build that positive mindset. And I think in these times, when we start to have, the things that do impact us, whether it's through COVID, whether it's through changes in specific industries that we've all seen throughout our careers, instead of getting on that downward negative spiral, let's start to look for the positives on that. Mark, I thought, gave a very good message today, as he kept clawing and scratching and looking for the positives of how he was going to move forward in his different challenges that he faced. And I think that's something that can benefit us all. And that is the end of it, my friends.
So let's turn to some questions. And Don's open for what's it take to work. Anybody want to throw out a question for Don? Because some of this stuff, Don, in all honesty, some of this stuff seems like common sense that we learn. So where do people? There's a couple in there, like focus on others instead of yourself. Right? Was wondering where. I'd be curious more so where people trip, because that's where you really become valuable instead of a book.
And I think when I talk to clients that are out there, sometimes they start to have that issue that that they will let the events control them, as opposed to just looking at their responses toward that. And I think it's just important, to help them get focused on moving forward and the positives to that. And that they can't necessarily, if they step back from that and take a look at that, once you get started in that negative spiral downwards, it's really hard to pull yourself out of it. And it's just important that you step back from it and do it that way. And I know I didn't answer what you just asked me, Hal. So I'm sorry. I got caught up in one thought, and it just kind of took it differently from what you asked me. So my apologies.
You're muted.
Sorry. Anybody else want to speak before I do? I'm glad.
Yeah, I am a huge supporter of Dan Sullivan. And back in the 90s, I took strategic coach even when I was going out to San Francisco on a quarterly basis, which is not a bad thing, in order to take the strategic coach program. And he does a fantastic job delivering his materials, but he also has done a fantastic job of staying in touch with business owners. And knowing what happens with people and knowing what's effective for them. He follows up his work. He doesn't just publish it. And then over the years, when you look at what he said, he's really targeted, and he's really done a great job with that.
So Don, following up Angie, okay, so now you've got good content. So where do people fall down? Where are the trips that we're making mistakes?
Well, I think in each of these, it's kind of the, if you take a look, and even at the manual that I uploaded there, people will trip over the first part of that, and they will pull back into themselves, and they'll focus more on themselves as opposed to letting go of that, and then trying to focus on the external, and they'll kind of focus more on the internal, and whether it becomes you discover your inner introvert, which I thought what Donna mentioned about, doing this, I'd always viewed myself as an extrovert, and having to do a lot of this via Zoom and not getting out and meeting people, you almost become very comfortable not doing that now, and which is kind of a shame. And so it's interesting because I also go through some training with Leo, I think it's Leo Sauls, when you talk about differentiating yourself from your competitors. And as a part of that, he talks about a gentleman named Matthew Pollard, who it's the Introvert's Guide to Networking, which is a book that's been out on the New York Times bestsellers list. And it's, if you take a look at all those different things, people have been, you kind of pull back into yourselves, which makes it hard to go out and to trip, you start tripping over the thing, the first parts of those don't. You need to focus yourselves more into the do's. And I don't think it's necessarily one or the other. I think it's a combination of all of those.
So Andre or Jeff, both of you guys are good at networking. What do you think from what Don heard? Where do you think one of the gaps is? Or where are you tripping? Where would you trip over?
Yeah, I think, the first instinct amid all this and the pandemic is what the impact is to ourselves. So it's no question that our immediate thought goes to self and preservation and, all the things that are happening to us in our business. But, what I've found is if you do kind of reverse that paradigm and pour into other people and find ways to be more outwardly focused on embody, I guess, to enliven the message of those people around you, your clients, your teammates, just be there to listen and to give them a safe space to express themselves and to tell you how they can be best served by your business and by what you have to offer. If you take that step back to get out of your own head and listen, there's so many opportunities to be of service to other people, which I think then leads to the gratitude and some of the other things. So I thought that was a great opening point, is just kind of focusing on others versus self, and then the rest kind of will follow.
And thanks, Jeff. I'm curious what Andre's got to say, because what I heard you just say, Jeff, Don saying do something, and you're saying that we kind of innately don't want to, so we've got to be intentional in what Don in adhering to what Don's saying. Andre, what's your thoughts?
I completely agree. Sometimes we tend as networkers to just go out there and just try to push our business on people, right? We don't tend to listen and understand what they're going through, and through all of that, that listening, that goes a far way. It's one of the worst things. You go to a networking event and the person is just talking all about them. It's all about them. And then at the end of the day, you don't really even want to engage with that person again. So what I'm saying, it's all about in this time, even in this time, it's great listening and have more empathy.
Good. Hey, JD, if you're there, I'm kind of curious because you've run some large businesses, and most of the people in this call are running small businesses at the moment. How does this apply to all of the from the larger companies that you're able to say, I'm going to do what Don's saying? Because some of it just sounds like it's academic, and yet our ego's getting away.
I think it's all about doing the right thing. It doesn't matter how big you are. Doing the right thing, making sure that the relationship you have with your customer is that they know that you support them and that you're friends with them, not that you're there for their cash. And I think the biggest thing I've learned in all the times, things that I've done when I've made a mistake, when I've owned it and said what I'm going to do about those mistakes, I've strengthened that relationship, and I've seen it gain me more business because I would stand up in it rather than trying to deflect or say, that was a systems problem, or just say, no, that's mine. You asked me to do something for you, and I've failed, and just that honesty. It doesn't matter how big you are, but it's a bigger challenge in a larger company.
Is it a bigger challenge because of self-confidence, or feel like somebody's can't be trusted?
I think in a larger company, sometimes in that fight to rise within the organization, sometimes folks will either deflect to someone else, or they won't own up to something because of that potential of moving forward. And I think not everybody. I mean, most of the folks I've always worked with have been fantastic, but there are always people that will do something that you the potential for trying to drive self, so that that ego gets in there.
Don, what else can you share for us? Oh, Dawn, I'm sorry, Donna, go ahead.
Yeah, I was talking about my inner introvert kicked my extrovert in the butt. And so what we decided to do, because I'm a small business, is I lead with value, and I usually lead with how can I help, which is always pre-COVID, during COVID, my posture. Mark is like that as well, the mayor over there. And so what I did is I came up with something very simple and very effective. I identified 20 people that I wanted to touch, and in the subject line, I said free for a 10-minute chat, want to catch up. And 20 out of 20 said yes. And these are people that are, referral sources, previous clients. It's not a prospect. These are people that I really genuinely know. How the heck are you doing? And I had 10-minute chats with all of them. It led to next steps in my business, but that was not my intention. The other thing I do is I keep a folder. There's a tool I called Mixmax. If you guys might know about it, you could set up standard emails. And there's a folder on that says TOY. Thinking of you. So I send toys to people. If there's a book I think they're interested in, if there's a quote I think they might like, if they're animal lovers, they're going to get an article. And so out of the blue, from the western skies, they get a toy, and it says, I'm TOY thinking of you. And it is another way to lead with value, to let people know that I'm thinking about them. And that's been a very positive experience for the folks in my orbit.
Oh, thanks, Donna. Don, anything else you want to bring up before we wrap up?
No, I think that's it for today.
Okay.
I appreciate everyone's input coming back on this. It's really good to hear the feedback from everybody.
And if you look in chat, not only did Don share his document on his advice, you'll see that Jeff Bond listed a book to follow up JD's comments about ownership. So there's a second piece in the chat. As we wrap up, whoops, not there. As we wrap up, again, humor is always important to us. So there's a favorite meme from the last year about what's scary. And do want to call out next week, Dawn will be talking about the speed of trust. I think I heard that here already, and JD's comment about when you're dealing in a larger company, how people will come back and forth with you. It's who's to be trusted to do those things. Ben will be speaking about some of the federal tax changes that are coming up and how to present your money, and a couple other conversations you can see that are posted on here. So,
And I apologize, Jeff was on 419 and I missed that line when I was.
for
pouring it.
Jeff Bond. So
Yeah,
keep
I'll
an
have it for
eye on
next
our
week.
calendar. We're here every Monday having a little bit of fun and sharing some great insights like Don was doing today. So thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. Let's make it a great week.
Good to see you all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Next week.
Have a great week.
Bye-bye.